I'm recording this on Easter Sunday, so happy Easter to everybody if you're watching on the same day. I'm an Englishman. I love my country. I've mentioned this before in videos to say that my parents are English and my grandparents are English, and I'm very much connected to this land and I love it. As an Englishman, I think it's absolutely important and vital to keep this country, to hold on to it as a nation, to plant the flag. And anybody who's watched my videos for any length of time, not just in the recent months, but going back a couple of years or more, will know that I've been exploring Englishness and England, the landscape, the heritage, the nature of this incredible land. And of course, its associate countries next to it, the Wales and Scotland and Ireland and Northern Ireland, they're all wonderful and fascinating places. And I think the geology is what makes it what it is. The history, of course, the culture, the traditions, the customs, and even the weather. It is a fantastic place. And for me, I so believe that it's important that we hang on to all of that. Now, we all know that right across the world, countries are being attacked by globalists who, for whatever odd and perverse reasons, believe that there should be no nations, no countries, that there is just a one way of doing things, a top-down concept of everything from culture to health to technology. And clearly, to any thinking person out there, to any thinking man, this has to be a nonsense, doesn't it? That wherever you are in the world is going to be different. You're going to react to things differently because of the geology, your history, your traditions, and of course the weather. It's going to make such a big difference. And yet these globalists believe that they have the solution for this planet. And of course, many people now are waking up to this concept and thinking, no, actually, this is not what we want. And there is a great pushback, and quite rightly so. This country is important to me because it's unique, like so many other countries. And at one time we were proud to fly our flag, despite certain things in our history that we've got wrong. You're never going to get everything right. You're going to make mistakes. Life is a learning curve after all. But I'm very proud of this country, and I don't like the way that it is being changed and manipulated. We've seen over the years, of course, how so many aspects of life have been taken over by corporations. We see that in, say, the food industry. Large corporations are telling us how we should eat. They're not telling us in so many words, but the way that food has been commoditized and it being processed into more and more enticing and convenient types of foodstuffs, and that our choice has been eradicated. You may think you have a choice when you go into the supermarket and you have a look and you think, wow, it's got a huge array of items there. But when you drill down and you realize the companies that are providing most of this stuff are actually owned by parent companies, and those parent companies are owned by mass corporations. And in fact, they're all like some big pyramid. They come back to one or two big companies who are making all the money. And again, it's this sort of top-down thing. We see it on the high street, that the small independent shops are slowly disappearing and have been disappearing rapidly over the last 20, 30 years, that now it's very difficult to have a shop on the high street, that you can be unique and have individually made items from anywhere across the world and all in a shop because of the high rates. We've seen how large chain stores have come in. If there's a grocery shop, a large chain store has come in and because of their buying power and their purchasing power and their supposedly huge array of items, has made things apparently cheaper and more convenient and nicer. And so the smaller shops are effectively bought away because they can't compete. We've seen it in farming. We've seen how the farming industry that started as a way of life, as small farms, mixed farms, circular farms in which they were sustainable farms, but also be able to provide for the communities around them, have expanded. Hedgerows have grown, have been taken out rather, and that larger companies now operate many of these farms, that they grow monoculture in the idea that they're trying to feed the world. And every time I mention this sort of thing, I'm being criticised by people who say, "Oh, Richard, you don't understand how farming works." And that is not true, because I've read a number of books actually from the old days of how farming works. And yes, it was hard and difficult. It was a way of life, and people were on the land and they loved it. And well, not all of them loved it, of course, that's all they knew. But there was a community and a spirit. Now that spirit seems to have been gone. Machinery has replaced the people, and the actual food that's grown is not as wholesome and as good for us as we think. We've seen all the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, the nitrogen that is being placed onto to grow food that is seeping into the waters and everywhere else. The fact that there are no farms that have the animals and the grain, that you have cereal farms and vegetable market gardens. You know, the whole industry has changed. And of course, the machinery and the mechanics have got huge and large and so expensive that actually you and I could no longer, should we wish to be a farmer, we couldn't get into the farming game if we wanted to. It seems now, like so many businesses, the reserve of those who have millions to invest in it, and you need huge amounts, and people cannot get their hands back in the ground. That the only thing you could do, if you can find one and run one, is a little allotment. England has changed so much, and people will say, but that's because there's so many more people and that we need to do these things way. It's the economies of scale. We have to work this way. And we found, of course, that our borders have eroded away. And with that, people have come, and on the whole, we have embraced people. But people are coming at such a huge rate that it's very difficult to assimilate those people. And so those people end up in enclaves, and they bring with them their own traditions. And instead of becoming part of England, or whichever country it is, the mix now is so much so that the offspring from those people over the last 20, 30, 40 years is that they no longer have that same sense of what England is. They call themselves British most of the time. They'd have no sense of what, say, in my country, what Englishness is. And they look down and think that Englishness should be abolished, that they're British, and somehow British is really just an amalgamation, a multicultural situation. Now, I'm not denigrating those people who've come and their families. We've embraced them, and as far as I can understand, we've been very generous for people to come to this country that's had 2,000 years of written history and traditions that over the years has come in. And whilst everybody has to embrace change, and change is necessary, that some of the change has been so rapid and different and difficult for generations to accept. I think change is just too fast, and that over time we can accept a number of things. And we've seen also into this land, of course, and across the world, the technology change, which has been even more rapid and insidious, in which now we find that people are being monitored by biometrics. They're being told that certain freedoms are going to be taken away because they want to save the planet, with this nonsense of heading to net zero on the basis that there is a global warming truth, when actually it is a myth that's been missold to us, that saying there's catastrophe in the next 10 years, and every time 10 years goes, there's another 10-year window. when actually the window, if the global warming is of any danger whatsoever, it's over centuries, not over decades. And so that we're panicking, it seems, we're being forced to panic unnecessarily. A gentleman, a very lovely gentleman, came to visit me. He drove, he's in his 70s, bless him. He drove 83 miles, he told me yesterday, to come and see me. And what an amazing gentleman who's done so much good for children in this nation in his charity work. And a beautiful and kindred spirit who equally loves England. He came, his name's Tom, and he came and visited me. He sat in the chair next to me, and I chatted to him, and we spoke about England and all of that. And I was more than happy to have him in my home and to learn about this wonderful man, this gentle man, and his love of this country and what he'd seen over the last 75 years and the changes that had happened. And I'd mentioned in the past, he'd watched me, and he said, you know, you've kept me going whilst he was having, I think it was chemotherapy and various things for a sad condition that he has. And he said that my videos had kept him going, which was, I mean, I was so humbled by that. He very kindly bought these beautiful flowers here for the lovely Julia, which she said would be nice to plant in my front garden, which is very kind of her. And in a previous video some time ago, I had espoused an idea, put forward an idea that is a dream that I would love, to buy a farm and to have in that farm space of a certain size in which I can almost claim the England of my dream, the England of Englishness, back for forever. That these globalists, these big corporations, these technocrats could not get hold of. A part of England, it may be only a few acres or so, but a part of England where I can fly the flag and claim as England, not the England PLC or limited, as so much of England and things have become, like the Houses of Parliament, the House of Commons, the Prime Minister's office, the councils are all corporations. People don't realise that. They are corporations and limited businesses that we vote for. The MPs themselves become limited businesses, not what we imagine. So much of what we learn or think as being true is theatre. And so I had this idea to have this farm, and Tom was encouraging me that I must do this, that somehow I must manage to get this to happen, because I would like to not only farm it myself and grow stuff, but not a monoculture, but to have a mixed farming of animals and pigs and cattle, and grow vegetables as well as crops, cereal crops, but not in huge numbers, but in small numbers with hedgerows, and to have the opportunity for people to come back onto the land, to do something, to get their hands in the soil, to create something magical again, to have a community. Now, I'm not talking about a commune of hippies that are sitting there smoking goodness knows what and, you know, doing what sometimes you see in what perhaps was going around in the 1970s, the sort of alternative existence. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about much more back in the old days of farming, where people worked. They worked hard. Yes, it was a bit back-breaking, I grant you that. But they were there out in all weathers. They were helping one another. They were growing real food, natural food, and they were healthy. They would retire to the pub and they would drink and put the world to rights. They would enjoy coffee and tea throughout the day, but they would grow and they would share experiences. And I know we have allotments and people do that, but I'm talking about a cohesive farmland that we can claim to be England, our country, and that all this nonsense that the technocrats, the elites and all of those wish to put on it would be eradicated, and say, no, we don't want that. We want our country back. We want to live as we once lived, as free men of the land, as free people, to have our own thoughts, not to be monitored, not to be told and dictated how we should live, not to live in in a legal system which penalises people, but to live in a world in which things are done by trial by jury, if you like, that people are consulted and they're part of it, a cohesive society. And if I can't make that happen through talking to you and waking people up and making them claim the whole country back, then maybe I can somehow find a farm that is perhaps going under, somehow make an offer and say, look, before you sell out to the developers, before you give up and roll over and sell this off to whoever, maybe we can claim England back, the work that you've put into this land, and hold on to it. When I was small, my house backed onto some farmland, and I used to walk over the farm, and I would pick up clay pipes, broken clay pipes brought up by the plough. Told me generations of people had worked that land, and it was part of me. I would go over the land as a boy, I would watch the farmer, and then when the farm was derelict, I would still play and imagine what it must have been like being a farmer. And now it's a housing estate. All essence of that original farmer's gone. There's fake mills and fake warehouses, as if it was something completely different. And my childhood has been destroyed by these developers who flattened over this wonderful, centuries-old farmland where people worked for the benefit of the community, to feed the community. They loved, they laughed, they got angry, they protested, whatever it might have been. My dream, I don't know how possible this is, but to have an area, some acres, that I can invite people to get back to the earth, to claim this country, to be wholesome, holistic, to have the what you might think of weeds, the herbs and the flowers and the wildflowers, the insects and real food growing all in the same place, all together, would be my dream. I don't know how possible it is to get and to achieve that, but I think it's important to hold on to our values more than any other time in history, to hold on to those values now, before these, what I can only conceive of as selfish, evil people want to herd us into 15-minute cities, want to digitize us into non-entities, want to put chips into us, want to spray us with chemtrails, want to guide us, and in with recent times with this medical intervention that they gave the illusion that it was a drug of hope, have actually been poisoning us and causing harms. More than any other time, we need to grab what we can. I'm not worried about this so-called avian flu, the scare that's going to get us off the countryside. I say we get back into the countryside, that we escape to the countryside and we grasp it before they take all of these things and everything that we hold precious from us.